Name and spell it again.
Okay, it's Richard Efthim. Last name is spelled E-F-T-H-I-M. And I am the manager of the Naturalist Center at the Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C., part of the Smithsonian Institution.
Let's start from the beginning, and we'll work our way
to
the end. What brings you here to Muncie?
The Museum of Natural History and the Smithsonian as a whole is very interested in exploring how museum resources, collections, scientists, and other sorts of resources can be made more accessible, more available to more people around the country. And we're interested in eventually developing a whole multimedia network that would allow that kind of access to take place. Our interest in coming to Muncie is working with Teachers College here at Ball State University to begin that whole process, to explore how these resources can benefit in education.
It's going to be housed here at Burris.
Yes.
And its focus is primarily within a particular grade area or age of student?
No, I see this as something that can be used over a full range of ages and ability levels. The programs that we've done traditionally at the Naturalist Center focus on middle and high school levels, but the objects themselves can be used for a variety of programs and activities for groups from pre-kindergarten all the way up through graduate level.
What's going to be in the exhibit?
Well, it's not going to really be an exhibit. It's going to be a collection of cabinets of material. We'll have a whole range of natural history objects from skulls and bones to skins of different animals, seashells, fossils, that sort of thing.
Where do the students benefit? What is different about this that they couldn't get in a normal classroom setting?
Well, what we want to be able to do is to begin to help teachers as well as students to begin to understand how objects can help in teaching them about science, about their local communities, about the environment, that sort of thing. The material that we'll be bringing, we hope, will serve as a catalyst to helping teachers to develop their own small classroom museum, so they would have resources which they've developed locally that would help them in making science much more enjoyable both for the students and for the teachers.
The things that are in the display cases, are they not readily accessible? In other words, you've collected things that are unique in their own area, in their own field.
Yeah, the collections that we've got are part of the Naturalist Center's teaching collection. We've used them in Washington with many students in a variety of different types of programs, both formal and sort of informal programs, having them look at the differences between different animals to interpret how these differences can help identify the kind of environment in which the animal lived, the type of lifestyles an animal lived, that sort of thing. The collections are all, we look at them as being very hands-on, so that it's not something that the students in working in a lab setting as this would be just looking at them or teachers using them as props, but we really want them to be used as the primary focus of an activity, something that the students would be using and examining to solve problems.
They're hands-on, which means the students will then take them and hold them and
Right.
work with them.
Right.
Can they be broken?
I'd hope not. But I mean, the material that's coming down here is material which are not scientifically valuable or of that level of concern. They're things which one of the lessons we hope gets communicated here would be that students have a much greater respect for museums and museum objects, living things, because most of the material that we are going to be sending was at one time alive. But that as museums, one of our primary purposes is to collect them to be utilized by scientists and students to learn about things that have been collected over a period of time. So we don't hope to see these things, shall we say, used up in 2 or 3 weeks. We hope that they can last several years or longer.
How long will the pieces stay here?
Well, we've set up the loan to the university on a yearly basis. We see it as being renewed yearly. We anticipate this being a very long-term project. We feel that anything that has to do with educational reform in improving science education throughout the spectrum of education, from students to college students to university professors to the actual classroom teachers, is something that isn't going to change overnight. It needs to be changed at all the different levels at the same time, and it's something that you're only going to be able to measure over time. So we see this as something that we would like to be committed to for a long time.
Is Ball State and Burris the first university, first college, first foray into a project like this?
For us, through the Naturalist Center, it is. There are many other initiatives that the Smithsonian does with area colleges, but this one is the first one that I'm aware of that is really looking at the idea of how objects can be used in the classroom, how they can be help in promoting change in the way that science and other sorts of subjects are taught in the classroom, and that sort of thing.
Are we picking up the crowd noise outside?
Well, I can hear it, but it's not real bad.
Okay, his voice is probably blocking it out.
Yeah.
enough that it-
Well, you can always cut into the kids actually using the objects and then pretend it's
Yeah.
actually them using it.
They're having
So,
great fun.
They're having a great fun.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Look at these kids going, and they go out for a long pace.
Yeah.
That's right.
One
Yeah.
skull goes across
Right.
the room.
Well, I mean, it's the collect. Some of the collections, the skins, because they're not taxidermied, in the sense of looking the way that you would see a trophy, for example. Most museums, and our museum especially, doesn't do that except for exhibition purposes. So the things that you are looking at will be prepared in a very similar sort of laid out format. They look a little bit more like, probably look more like roadkills than they do like the live animals. But the idea is that this is the way that that typical scientific research is done, and the way that they prepare these skins for later comparison.
We have at our house, we had a boa constrictor, a 4.5-foot boa, and we have, his name was Fryer. We since sold him to another family in Indianapolis who is collecting boa constrictors. Why, strange collection. But we have Fryer's skin that he shed 2 different times in 2 envelopes, which is our beginning of our own little...
Very good. Yeah, well, we would encourage that sort of thing. We want to encourage people to really stop and take time to look at their neighborhoods, their environment, and this would be one way to help stimulate that kind of curiosity.
So that's really, you're sort of developing a blueprint for schools to start to follow and develop a natural curiosity, a way to accomplish a goal. And that
Right.
goal is to have a greater appreciation and study of the natural science.
Very much so, yeah. And to do that, like I says, by involving the schools more, involving teachers more, and to also begin to look at ways in which we can provide even more resources, if they have to be through an electronic form, to encourage that still further. Right.
Great. Certainly enjoyed the
Should be a fun
students.
time.
Dave, just interact with the kids, talk about some of the things they're seeing. Just sort of chit chat there.
The artifacts represent a variety of different species and different things. We have shells, a lot of birds, and we saw some of the other animals that are down below. There's the skunk. There's a mole up here. There's little sand dollars. There's a duck in here. The lessons that we do in our classrooms now, but to make things more meaningful using things that you might actually see. I especially like this shell because there's a lot of mathematical properties in it. When you get into pre-calculus, into micro properties of that spiral. In geometry, if you've talked about Archimedes and Archimedes' spot.
Look at this. This is a garaka. I can't even say.
There are quite a few of the birds, different birds, and you can see a lot of them have still a lot of their color. And as you look at the tags, many of them tell how old these things are. And some of the birds' specimens are even 100 years old or older. Museum. So you'll see on the tags a lot of times where they're from. Something else. There's the museum catalogs all their specimens, so we could probably even go back and find the history of many of these artifacts, where they're from, how they were collected. What do you got there, Savon?
Looks like a skull or something.
So it doesn't have a tag on it.
Mm-mm. No tag.
That's a jaw of some kind of animal. Might be a bobcat skull. There were quite a few in the collection that we saw.
Oh my gosh.
Is that a hawk?
I've never seen one of those before.
Dave, just so we get things straight, say your name and spell it for us.
Okay, it's Dave Police, Police.
Okay, and your title.
I'm an instructor of mathematics.
Which brings up a real obvious question. How does mathematics fit into the artifacts from here?
Well, we believe that there's a real connection between science and math, and one of our major goals is to be able to connect the two disciplines, and even in fact all disciplines eventually. And so right now, we're primarily focused on math science, but we hope to expand that in the future.
Tell us about integrating the artifacts from the Smithsonian into the curriculum. How are they going to help you? And talk about the team concept that you alluded to earlier.
Okay. Well, there is a team of 10 of us, 5 Ball State professors and 5 Burris teachers. We'll be working together to try to do just that, decide how to integrate the artifacts into our curriculums. What kinds of changes are we going to need to make? Are we going to be able to just fit them into what we're doing now? Or how much are we going to change what we're doing to fit the artifacts? So it really is a team concept. And working in coordination with the Ball State professors gives us some research to look at eventually on inquiry-based learning and objects-based learning, and how those two things fit together.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay. What we're really trying to do is to utilize artifacts, whether they're these artifacts or something that a kid picks up in their backyard, and connect school to real-world learning. We want to make things meaningful. What we do in school has importance to what this big place is around us.
Ooh, that's very good. How did Burris and Ball State and the Smithsonian get hooked together?
It originally was a Ball State kind of connection. The team leader, Dr. Fran Peterman, had some connections with the Smithsonian, was involved in discussions with them when this opportunity became available. She kind of built her team of Ball State people, and then from there she built the team of the Burris people. And then we've just kind of been working together ever since.
Why lodge it at Burris? Why not keep it over across the street?
I think really what the Smithsonian is interested in is how can they expand their educational activities to schools. The center at the Smithsonian, a part of its function was to help teachers with classroom activities. And the Smithsonian is interested in how they can utilize those artifacts to affect kids.
Okay, if you were to put your finger on something specific, if you can do that, how do you see this specifically being integrated into a curriculum?
Well, I think we're looking at, for example, some of the species of shells that we have. There's a world of statistical data that we can collect on just a small set of seashells. We can do some graphing kinds of things in the math classroom. We can talk about why those shells developed the way they did for a science connection. So there really is, I think, we're just now scratching the surface of what we can do with those things.
Great. Oh, adaptive phys ed and
Adam.
the Atom Project. The Atom Project is neat.
They gave us a copy of that. So.
Do you have that?
Yeah.